Good morning, everyone. Welcome to The Modern Market. This is our daily show from Monday to Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern Time, 12 p.m. GMT, every day of the week, where we discuss all things to do with the modern market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, and sometimes the Web3 gaming market too. We've got all kinds of great news to bring you today from the last 24 hours, but just a reminder, friends, nothing that we say here is financial advice. This modern market is exceptionally risky. We do not know anything for sure. So please do proceed with caution and exercise your own judgment. I am your host, B-Check, for today and every day. I'm joined by my legendary co-host, Legendary, and we have a very special guest with us today. We have Julio, the CEO of Pixelmon. Pixelmon is, of course, the first truly decentralized IP powered by the Mon protocol, launching 2 mid-core and 2 hyper-casual games in 2024, starting with Pixel Pals AI. They are in the headlines today, and we're delighted to be able to bring the CEO to the stage with us to get into a little bit of a discussion on what they are cooking with Play Ember. So we're going to get into all of that in just a moment. Legendary, how are you doing this Wednesday, the 31st of January?
And GM, I am particularly excited for today's show. I feel like it's a perfect lineup in terms of events. We had Julio with us yesterday on the ZTX Spaces, where he did break the announcement of working together with Play Ember. Now we can dive a bit more into that alpha today. It's also the first time that I actually see Julio. Like, we've been on Spaces before multiple times with him, so that's pretty cool. For everyone in the audience, we're also live streaming on YouTube as every day, and I think this will be a great show.
Absolutely, looking forward to it. Julio, welcome to the stage with us. How are you doing? How is your Wednesday going?
Oh, well, no, thank you for having me. And it's a very interesting change to be on camera. We did a lot of stuff on camera back in 2022 when we were trying to get people to know the entire team, but I haven't done it for more than a year. And I find it refreshing. It's nice to talk to a face while having these conversations and not there wondering if Twitter, if X has rugged you because you don't hear anyone for a couple of seconds. So yeah, glad to be here, and it's been a good Wednesday so far.
Amazing. Is that something you guys thought about a lot internally? Do you have any policies around that? Do you kind of let people choose whether they want to stay completely anonymous or whether they go on video? I remember when we started this show a while ago, I had to work quite hard on Legendary to say, like, come on, we got to do video. We got to do video. Look at all the other media people who get the biggest deals. Got to do video at some point. Has that been on your mind at all?
So, when we picked up, so we come from Web 2, and in
Okay.
Web 2, the concept of anonymity is it's a little bit as if you would have something to hide. So to be frank, we started without even asking us the question. It was the natural inclination was to be so-called doxed, and so it was for most of our gaming team. Now, true, there are a few members of our moderation team and partnerships team that would rather not. But frankly, one has to take a step back and look at Pixelmon's history. No matter what the space decides the level of transparency should be, Pixelmon should always be more transparent than everyone else because of its past. So in that sense, what we tell people is, if you want to have a leadership position, if you want to be able to share information about the project in an official capacity, people need to know who you are. Yeah.
Very, very interesting. Definitely that relationship between anonymity versus, well, being doxed versus being undoxed is like a difficult balance to strike. Because I guess there are clearly positive and negatives both ways. One quick question, well, maybe this is a long question, but the structure of the show for the people listening in, I'm going to ask one question that I really feel like asking first. Then we're going to get into the normal structure of the show. We're going to hit all of the headlines from the snapshot, which is pinned up top, in just a little bit. We're going to do a bit of a deep dive with Julio as well as hitting the price action, all the usual discussion. Quick question first, Julio. Obviously, you mentioned the Pixelmon past. Like, At which stage was it that you actually came in to take the reins, just so people know when you're contributing, like where you
Yeah.
sit in the kind of Pixelmon history?
Yeah. So we sit in the Pixelmon history after mint, after art reveal, in a period of around 2 months in which the project went in a near stall, when the original founder had sort of understood that his weaknesses revealed by the art reveal uh, were such that the community didn't have a strong faith in him. And his reaction was to, okay, I'm not going to touch the money, but I'm also not going to do anything right now because I'm a little bit scared of anything I would do wouldn't be the right thing to do. And that's more or less when we stepped in. Time-wise, we're talking May 2022 when we stepped in. The mint was Feb 2022. The institution of the channel was sometime in late 2021 as a Discord community, originally a gaming Discord community native.
Very interesting. Okay, that's helpful to place it. Legendary, what was your connection to Pixelmon then? I believe there was a round of announcements yesterday, and you were one of the ambassadors. So congratulations on that. How did you guys connect? At what point was that?
I mean, I thank you first of all. I did mint Pixelmon back then.
Nice.
Obviously, in the beginning was kind of shocked with what's going on. Then I was rooting for the comeback ever since. I think it was for the first time in October 2022 that I posted, okay, this could be a really, really strong comeback, seeing what has happened up to then, seeing that the funds and everything are still there, and knowing how much it takes in terms of resources and money to build an actual game. And ever since been quite supportive, and happened to have a good chat with Vi, who is with us in the audience. Julie and I have talked mostly on CTX spaces so far, in terms of him coming as a frequent guest, and one thing led to the other, and I was quite excited to be able to join the pretty legendary lineup of ambassadors.
Yeah,
No pun intended.
very, very good group, for sure. Look, let's get into it. We're going to get into the Pixelmon news and information in just a little bit. But first, let's bring you the main headlines from around the space, as well as the price action. As always, this comes to you from the snapshot, which is pinned up top. If you do find that it brings you some value today, please do give it a like. So starting with the price action, we've got crypto down 1%. Bitcoin's at 42.6K. ETH is at 2.3 flat. Solana's down 4% at 99. Ape is at 1.4. NFT volume on ETH is at 11.1. Solana is 7.4. Bitcoin is at 7.3. Getting into the headlines for today. Number one, this has been on our mind. We discussed it a lot yesterday. Number one, Jupiter airdrop to go live today at 10 a.m. Eastern time. Pretty exciting there. We do want to talk about it a little bit more later in the show, just for some final instinctive predictions / strategies. Number two, Standard Chartered expect SEC to approve ETH ETFs on May 23. We're going to start with that piece of news today, and try to get some thoughts on ETH price action. And then finally, Pixelmon and PlayEmber announces gaming partnership for a new casual mobile game. Pixelmon came out to say this isn't just any normal partnership announcement. PlayEmber and Pixelmon will be collaborating on a completely new Pixelmon casual mobile game created and published by PlayEmber, launching in Q2. The PlayEmber team has shipped over 40 mobile games, amassing more than 120 million downloads. Very big partnership alliance between two Web3 gaming titans. In terms of some more price action, we have CryptoPunks at 61 ETH, down 1%. Bored Apes at 24.5 ETH. Mutants at 4.3, down 5%. DGods at 2.8, down 5%. Captains at 4.5, flat. Azuki down 5% at 6.6. Penguins down 3% at 16. Moonbirds at 1.1. Nouns winning bid was at 7.3 ETH. We had a gold hoodie Node Monk selling for 1.8 Bitcoin, which is $77,000. And a Dmitry Cherniak ring is selling for 22.2 ETH. That's $52,000. Legendary. Those are the headlines. That is the price action. Any numbers catching your eye before we get into the headlines today?
Definitely like to see the Node Monkey sale. I think as much as I wish to spend more time in ordinals, whenever I see a sale above 1 BTC, which seems to be quite the magical mark, especially if you also compare it to the price action on ETH NFTs, I do experience a significant increase in FOMO.
I love it. We talked about unit bias so much, right? And one of the reasons why I sold some Solana NFTs was because I thought, damn, the number's so high. Like you've got Solana NFTs trading for like 100, 150, almost 200 Sol. And if Sol rips, it's going to be hard for people to think in their head, I think, in my opinion, that I want to hold that much Solana. Whereas, just 1 Bitcoin here, 2 Bitcoin here, who cares? Send Bitcoin to 100K, it doesn't matter. It's just 1 Bitcoin. I feel like there's a little bit of unit bias there. Any instinctive thoughts on that, Legendary?
Absolutely agree, man. Like, I'm coming to London next week, looking at flights. They are like, what, 0.05-ish ETH, essentially free. So if we keep pricing things in ETH or also in BTC, there is definitely a unit bias that makes everything look super, super cheap. But also makes trading easier.
It does. It does. Right. Let's get into the first headline. First headline we're going to start with today is the Standard Chartered news. Standard Chartered expects SEC to approve ETH ETFs. Just going to get this up on YouTube for the people watching and make sure that everyone else is up to speed. I'll read it out. So this is an article by The Block. The quick takes are that the Standard Chartered Bank expects the SEC to approve spot Ethereum ETFs on May the 23rd. The bank predicts a potential $4,000 target for ETH if it mimics Bitcoin's pre-approval performance. Funny that the bank is now using the Bitcoin kind of price action before that ETF and just copy pasting that to the Ethereum situation. They say the SEC is expected to follow the strategy employed in improving spot Bitcoin exchange traded funds for spot Ethereum. ETFs started with objections and ultimately granting approval on the initial final deadline on May 23rd, according to Standard Chartered Bank. We expect pending applications for US spot ETFs to be approved on May the 23rd, the final deadline for the first of the ETFs under consideration. Look, I don't know if we want to spend ages and ages on this, Legendary, but I guess a key question that I have for you, which seems to be the quick takeaway here, is do you think that it is appropriate to copy and paste that pre-ETF Bitcoin price action onto ETH? What are your thoughts?
I don't think that you can copy paste it one-to-one necessarily. I think what we've also seen with the BTC ETF approval or in the pre-approval days and weeks is a massive run-up in the price of ETH. Actually, on a couple of days, way stronger than the price increase in BTC because people were speculating, okay, this is going to be the next thing. So the question then is, what will run on the ETF news of ETH? Will it be a Solana ETF rumor, etc.? I definitely think there will be positive price action the closer we get to that approval date, but I don't think that you can safely assume it will mimic BTC one-to-one in the short term. In the long term, obviously, it is an extremely bullish thing to have, as we've discussed on the show many times.
Interesting stuff. I'm just trying to get some further context from the article. This person, Kendrick, who's Kendrick? Jeffrey Kendrick, head of Standard Chartered Bank. Okay, that's helpful. He's an important person. This important person generally holds an optimistic outlook on crypto, the head of Standard Chartered Bank, especially regarding price trends. Earlier this month, before spot Bitcoin ETFs were approved, he said those funds are expected to attract inflows of $50 to $100 billion this year. And as a result, the Bitcoin price could rise to $100,000 by the end of the year and $200,000 by the end of 2025. The $100,000 price prediction still looks achievable, Kendrick said in today's report, adding that expected steady inflows in spot Bitcoin ETFs will gradually raise the Bitcoin price. Legendary, any thoughts on that additional commentary from the head of the Standard Chartered Bank on Bitcoin itself?
I do like the additional commentary. I also like what we've seen with the BTC ETFs, which is a continuous flow of capital into the ETFs, and it's something that we talked about the show, and that also Eric Balkunas pointed out. It's a bit unusual to see with many newly launched ETFs. You have like a peak of interest in the first couple of days, and then that basically goes down. But we've seen multiple volume spikes with the BTC ETFs and the sustained interest, which is a good sign. 100K BTC obviously sounds very, very appealing, but I'll keep my optimism a bit in check because I'm already experiencing too much FOMO. So I need to control that level of FOMO.
Yeah, that's funny. I think all of my reading around this is my take, and I would be interested to hear maybe one other take on this if anyone would like to give one. But from all the reading that I've been doing / the analysis and observations from people on Twitter, is that people are very, very impressed with the amount of inflows into Bitcoin. And in particular, that statistic we had as a headline yesterday, which was that 3% of all Bitcoin has now been gobbled up by Bitcoin ETFs. Like, these ETFs have been around not a long time, and they've secured 3% of all of Bitcoin. So I think that is just an incredibly impressive number. And you have to think that that number is going to aggressively increase both this year and simply over time as well. Legendary, do you think that's an appropriate kind of thought process? Then would love to bring Sam, NFT Stats, in on this for any thoughts on potential ETH price action for its ETF.
Absolutely think that is an appropriate line of thought. I think the 3% mark is incredibly impressive, especially if you think about the type of buyers. It's not people who are buying the ETF to exit it once there is a 3% pump on a day and they kind of day trade that ETF, at least certainly not the majority of it. Definitely some price agnostic, some significant price agnostic money moving in, institutional money moving in, more long-term oriented money moving in. And if we'll see a significant amount of the total BTC supply locked in those ETFs, things could get really crazy over the next couple of years, especially if you think we had the ETF for how long? For like 2 weeks, 3 weeks. So it's already moving faster than many probably have expected in the TradFi world.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. Sam, NFT Stats is back with us. Welcome to the stage, my friend. Do you have any particular thoughts on whether it's appropriate to copy and paste the kind of pre ETF trading action for Bitcoin onto ETH now?
I don't think it is. I also think that stat is misleading because the day that the ETF started, there was already that much Bitcoin. And the reason for that is that it's almost all grayscale. So GBTC, the day that the ETF was launched, had 616,512 Bitcoin under management, basically, that equivalent. And right now, the total is 618,000. So it's only gone up 2,000. And so I'm surprised that that story is being circulated because it's misleading, because it's not like the world has gone out and bought 3% of all Bitcoin. That's basically where we started. So that's my understanding. And I think that's a misleading stat. I think the situation with Grayscale had such an enormous impact on price action. I think with GBTC, I wrote a thread about it yesterday because I think it's a little confusing why GBTC would have caused Bitcoin's price to go down. But I did write a thread about that for people who don't kind of have their head around it. And maybe once you read my thread, you will still not have your head around it, because I'm not sure it was a well-written thread. But I did write it. I spent some time on that, so that'd be worth looking at. But I mean, if you look at GBTC, it's gone from 613,000 to 487,000. So you've seen something like 150,000 Bitcoin sold, 140,000 Bitcoin sold from GBTC, and that's been picked up by the others. But yeah, I can give you, I'll DM you that thread if you want to pin it. Check, because I personally, like, as someone who's kind of intrigued by market dynamics gone weird, the GBTC story I think is one of the more fascinating ones.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Please DM the sorry, the Modern Market account, Sam, because that's the one I'm using at the moment. So then we'll pin that.
Cool.
Thanks so much for that. Really interesting insight. Julio, what are your thoughts on this, the ETF situation looking forward to the ETH one? Do you think there's similarities or differences between the Bitcoin one and ETH?
Thank you for bringing me in. Not my usual topic, but certainly one we care about a lot. Look, I think the comparison of the starting point, grayscale versus not, is super insightful, pragmatic, and direct, and there's nobody that can contest to it. I think another layer to it, where I am a little bit skeptical versus the optimism of Standard Chartered. Not that I'm pessimistic in any way on Ethereum, but just using the same curve mapping. Well, ultimately, ETH and BTC are different assets in the fact that one is seen as a clear store of value, the other one is a lot more functional. And the ETF as an instrument is probably a lot more oriented towards store of value type investors. So that's another nature of asset-wise. I believe there's slight differences. But on the other hand, maybe I'll flip this back to self-fulfilling prophecies, because while we can be very pragmatic about how we analyze their statement, the reality is their statement in itself can be self-fulfilling. So when somebody like Standard Chartered, and then we saw it with BlackRock, and then the statements made, when these guys go out and make statements of this magnitude, sometimes they simply become self-fulfilling, even if we might say, oh, maybe you're a little bit too optimistic there on fundamentals. The reasons ETH will go to 10,000 are different. In our case, it's 10, not 4. But their statement itself drives ETF adoption. Yeah, that's the only...
Yeah, very, very interesting. The extent to which we automatically align with the narratives that other people put out. I do think that now that there's clear alignment between many of these bigger institutions, that we should probably see some price action. Certainly that's the instinctive feeling, the direction that we should go in. I guess we just haven't been able to see that at the moment. But the message, as you say, coming out from these people is that they are incredibly bullish. Interesting stuff. I think it was nice to touch on that, to start to think about that, because ETH has been flat for a little while, and we just want to start thinking about where that could go in the next few months. Let's move on. Let's move on to the next headline. The next headline was obviously from the snapshot. Pixelmon and Ember announced gaming partnership for a new casual mobile game, Legendary. Do you want to first just set this up from our perspective, why we thought that this was like a very significant partnership?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in the last couple of weeks, we obviously had news around both Pixelmon and Ember. Ember had their very successful free mint last week, and have announced more on their roadmap, building on their success as a Web2 mobile gaming studio, featuring boasting more than 120 million downloads on their games. Pixelmon obviously also having a focus on mobile gaming as well, not exclusively mobile gaming, but definitely the main product being in the mobile segment. And yesterday, when I had both Julia and John, Pixelmon and Ember on the ZTX Spaces, they announced that they want to work together on a joint game built by the two teams, which I think is, well, it is a significant news piece just in itself, that it's more than a collab on, reposting each other's stuff, and I don't know, like having one character, having Kevin featured, for example, in the Ember world, or having MB featured in the Pixelmon ecosystem. But going further than that, and I found it quite interesting from the perspective of being able to ask a couple of questions that I didn't have a chance to ask yesterday. For example, how does it even work in practice? I imagine you have two full sets of teams. You have creatives on both sides. You have both people who have a strong vision about how their ecosystem works and how the brand ought to be built. And how does it even work, Julia, maybe as the first question for you, that we have those two teams coming together? How do you split tasks and responsibilities? Who is doing what when building that game together?
Yeah. So it's a great question. It's actually, the answer is super important because it's what Pixelmon has to be equally good at doing that as it has to be good at building its own games. We've often said that our vision with Pixelmon is not just to be a gaming studio, but to be an IP. To be an IP means that ultimately, yes, you're a builder, you're the starting point, but ultimately, if you're an IP, it means you grow way faster because people license and build for you. And you know, let's be honest, Pokemon Unite was not built by the Nintendo gaming studios. Pokemon Go was not built by the Nintendo studios. The plushie toys you find around are not built by their teams. So that's what being an IP means, and that means we need to be very good at letting others build within our rules and context. As good, if not better, at that than to building ourselves. This is also why the announcement is so significant, because it's the first sign that there's actually inklings of IP there when somebody else wants to build with your characters. And back to how we do that. Well, it takes an effort of trust and an effort of loosening, of basically giving some space to maneuver, because the agreement we have with Play Ember is to let them build a game that fits what they know how to build, which is the hyper casual segment, while not creating major contradictions in our world. So don't put them on spacecrafts, and you know, but beyond that, effectively make a game that fits our lineup of characters. We will provide all of our creatives for you to adapt upon. And we'll, of course, have check-ins where we will have approval stages, but we have to take a step back and let them build in between those check-ins, because that's how you can achieve fast building. If you try and micromanage a team like Play Ember, you're gonna ruin them. They're better than you at doing what they do. So yeah, it's mainly actually about giving them freedom and early direction.
Really interesting. Just for people who maybe don't know, Giulio, that's great, kind of setting up on how you might go about this practically. But for the people who don't know, what is Pixelmon's kind of speciality when it comes to gaming? What is Play Ember's speciality when it comes to gaming? And do you think these types of partnerships is the way people will continue to do this type of gaming in future? I've seen there's been 2 examples now where I've seen a different people building games and different IPs, working with different IPs to kind of integrate, constant integration of other IPs. There was the GG protocol with Pixel Vault. I think they're trying to incorporate other people's IP, and the Chimpers game recently that's just been released, constantly trying to get other groups involved. Nifty Island, of course, has integrated like many types of IPs. So what are your 2 specialities at the moment, and do you think this is the way things will need to be done in the future?
Yeah, let me split that in 2. So yeah, what are our specialities to start off with? So the Pixelmon team is built first and foremost as world builders. So their priority is thinking, what is the lore of this world? What are the abilities of these characters? How do I store Pixelmons? They're storytellers first. So there's we actually started building our team starting from narrative people, so lore, concept art, then building from there to game design, from then game design to development. And within development, because of that, we are hyper focused on what we call high fidelity 3D mobile games. So a mobile game played in third person view, 3D, with high graphic results, particularly for mobile standards. So imagine playing Assassin's Creed on mobile. That's the kind of graphic within the limitations of the processor, but that's the kind of graphic objective. And our games tend to then be very focused on RPG-ish storylines with semi-active combat mechanics, which can be fast turn-based declination or pure active combat. And our character builds are very elaborate, high definition, very focused on the detail, on telling the story of that IP, of that character. The Play Ember team is specialized on hyper casual games with massive volumes of players, all free to play, typically strongly Android type player focused versus iOS, and very simple looping mechanics that one can engage in even if he has 2 minutes free time without a steep onboarding curve to the game. The game are mostly hyper simplified 3D or 2D. And because of that, they focus, instead of on a niche base of very engaged, high-spending players, they focus on a very wide player base. So their games have from 5 to 20 million downloads each.
Wow.
And those are numbers that you won't find in the RPG space, even if you go to the top RPGs. So those are the differences between the two teams. Now, to your point about IP cross-pollination, I think there's two sides to it. So the examples of Nifty Island, the examples of putting your characters in sandbox, the examples of even, I think we put our Kevin in X Society, a Korean first-person shooter project. These are what I would call collabs and IP Easter eggs, nearly, between games. In the case of Nifty Island, it's deeper than that. It's actual sub-world creation. But and I think this is more down to cross-marketing and interoperability of the assets, the NFTs in circulation. And I think we will see a lot more of this. Just take the example of PUBG's licensing platform. The name escapes me now, but that they launched a couple of days ago, where basically you can go and ask, can I use your PUBG? Bam, bam, pretty automated. And I think that's also I've always thought that the power of crypto of blockchain was to allow quick royalties and seamless royalty systems. I think the licensing world and everything is a nightmare of bureaucracy, where most things just don't get done because it takes too long to license them. While this can be 2 clicks, and even royalty delivery can be, you can switch the owner of a license and the licensee doesn't even need to know. They just pay the contract that owns it. But anyways, sorry, I'm digressing. From the side of what we're trying to do, we're trying to actually get people to build end-to-end products using our IP. So we're trying to say, you know what, you're doing a t-shirt line. I think the entire line should be built around Kevin, and you're going to sell it faster because it's built around Kevin. And all we're asking you for is pay a little bit of royalties through the chain to our holders. And that's why, frankly, we're looking at building on Roblox unique products. And we're looking at building in Unreal Fortnite Engine. Real editor. We're looking at building. We're in the hyper casual space. We want to find a partner for location-based games, etc. And what is true is, when you look at studios, good studios are specialized on a certain genre. A good studio that knows how to do good location-based games, so like Pokemon Go, they probably are not great at making MOBAs. And the guys that are great at making MOBAs are probably not great at making card games. So you can't be good at everything, but a great IP should be across genres and should be successful across genres. So it's about finding the right partner so that you have the best game per genre.
Interesting. Two things that really interested me there, or just one realization maybe. When you mentioned Kevin, I have to ask about Kevin. So for the people just joining, you mentioned you joined like after Mint. You were not part of the original team. That's how you came into the project. You inherited Kevin. Kevin is obviously one of, I'm going to put this, I've just searched for it. I've got it on YouTube. Kevin has become one of the most recognizable Web3 characters that could possibly exist. I just did a search for Kevin Pixelmon, and there's still people just routinely tweeting about it, just in all kinds of ways. It looks like he's been made into some gold statue here. Like, this is just a normal day on crypto Twitter.
That's Forbes they're buying Kevin, by the way.
Oh, this
that
one.
You just no, up.
Yeah.
Up a little bit.
Oh, here.
Yeah.
To celebrate, we're hosting a giveaway with our friends at Pixelmon. So what was this one?
Forbes. Well, this was actually just a week or two ago. Forbes Web3, their Web3 account, the Web3 division, just decided to immortalize and buy a bit of the best NFTs out there. If you click on this one, you'll see that this is just the second of a thread. And at the beginning of the thread, what they had done is they had bought an OG Kevin from the collection for their vault.
That's so fascinating. That's so fascinating. Like, when you inherited Kevin, like, what did you think? Did you honestly, hand on your heart, think this is going to become one of the most successful aspects of our IP? Or did you think, well, this is an embarrassing thing, I need to try to turn this aspect around?
So, I mean, my first question was, does the designer here have an uncle he really doesn't like who's named Kevin? Not my first reaction, but no, look, the reality is Kevin was actually one of the reasons we decided to acquire the collection ownership from the original founder, because look, there were a few good things in there. There was a community. So there was an idea which was very strong, which was simply Pokemon is great, but it stops being great when you become 18, 19, 20, at least from a games and anime perspective. Why don't we make an 18 to 35 Pokemon? So one with blood and swearing. Okay, that actually, I can jump on board with that. Second, had a great community because those jump on board with that people really believed in it. But third, it had Kevin, because all the other characters needed to be scrapped. But Kevin, from the get-go, we looked at it. We looked at the noise it was getting, even in Q1 2022. And it was obvious you were looking at an organic marketing engine for Web3. You were effectively looking at owning the IP of Pepe. And if you could flip that story so that it wasn't accompanied by lack of trust, but by feelings of they've got a comeback, but they don't take themselves too seriously and they own their past, then, well, that's just like rocket fuel in your marketing. It's like you have the formula to win SEO and you need to do less SEM for the online marketeers out there. And I mean, it became true. We launched a Kevin collection, when was it? 6 months ago, 5 months ago on Base, when Base was 8 days old. Brian Armstrong just bought one off the bat and retweeted it. We sold 25,000 in a day. I mean, and we didn't do marketing for that collection. We literally just posted it.
That's unbelievable.
So I'm a big believer in Kevin. We're giving Kevin a surname soon, Kevin DeRug. It sounds a little bit like a DE space rug, but a little bit like a. But you got to see Kevin as the immortality of this space that doesn't take itself too seriously, but wants to work hard to prove itself. Yeah.
Very interesting. Really, really interesting stuff. I see Jack's got his hand raised, maybe with a question or comment. We're going to go to him in just a second. I've got one more question, kind of from a more corporate perspective, Giulio, because I'm interested in how you thought about the valuation. You mentioned when you thought about part of your acquisition, you had to analyze like community, IP, and third was Kevin. Like, how did you kind of weight these different factors in terms of your valuation? What was most important? Was it ultimately Kevin? Because it clearly was part of your valuation thesis.
Yeah, no, Kevin was a cherry on the cake. Let's be honest, because without the first two, without the first two, you can't build the base. And to be frank, you could have built the base without Kevin. You could have gone forward without Kevin. But once you know what you're going to do, like the IP idea makes sense. Once you know that there's already product market fit, incredible product market fit. This thing had issued some of the worst art in NFT, and everybody was still in that Discord saying, "Give us a game."
Yeah.
Not give us a refund, give us a game. So the ones in the Discord, and Kevin was just, okay, I'm going to do this more efficiently because I'm going to have a good comeback icon to it. But no, the first two elements were kind of like the minimum needed to be able to even consider going ahead.
Very interesting stuff. Legendary, want to check in with you as well if you have any other questions or comments as well. Jack, your hand is raised first. What do you have a question for Julio, or did you want to comment?
Yeah, question for Julio, definitely. And thanks for hopping up today, and thank you both for hosting the spaces. But I think what my question is, and it definitely goes to the IP more generally, and like how Web3 just seems to be, completely rewriting the rule book here. How do you see your input in this like IP building distribution? The way, like, the idea of the company not exclusively owning the IP is so alien to like Web 2. If you ever try and speak to anyone who understands like that operation side, they completely that's where you lose most people in that industry. And like with Pixelmon, like as it grows, will there be like members on the team who will like live in almost a support role to like IP/NFT holders, or considering how to unlock the full power of the the community owned and like supported IP side? Like how do you consider that? How do you like think about that as a business?
Look, you bring up a great point. So even just periodically, I have to sit down with my large art team and explain to them why we are okay sharing their assets left, right, and center down to the actual FBX 3D build files. And it's so alien, particularly to the gaming industry, because I found that the gaming industry is 10 times more secretive about their builds and files than even like the science guys and the guys building patents. And it isn't easy combos, but I find that a good starting point and example is open source coding and what it has done to coding. Of course, it's two different worlds. One is pieces you can use, but it is a good starting point to explain it to them and to start telling them that there is another way, which is the way of defining enough of the IP that everybody can grasp it. Or grasp the essence of it, but then letting them play around with it and twist it in their own ways. And that might create just faster IP spread than trying to instead control it down to the highest quality level. And not only, but financial result-wise, that it's easier to let people build, and then go only knock at that door and say, hey, pay my holders royalties when those builds become sizable, than try to identify the ones that you think will become sizable early on, go through a bunch of paperwork, minimum guarantees, etc., etc. So I think financially, it's in my opinion, it's worth a try. It's a better model. I think for the community, it's the only one that can ultimately reward early community members and keep them involved while aligning incentives. Not a situation where, let's say, the early community ultimately does not benefit long term in a brand, even if they were what propelled it from an idea to something that went from niche to mainstream. I think those people that take you from niche to mainstream, the niche needs to be rewarded and needs to be kept as a part of the decision makers to maintain your quality. Now, with regards to our team, yes, we will have to. So this is what Mon Protocol is about. Mon Protocol, which is effectively the token part, but it's also the powering of the decentralized IP ecosystem, is about creating the tech, so the product framework, and the people framework that allow this flow of decisions to happen all the way to the nitty gritty. Like, how do you create sub DAOs where you vote on licensing a single character versus DAOs that vote on licensing all 214 characters? How do you decide whether to give a grant? How do you police and enforce later possible negative usages, non-ethical usages of those images? And what moderators and legal framework you need around it. That's what Mon Protocol is about. And that's why I think if Mon Protocol proves it can do this for Pixelmon, it can theoretically do it for any IP that wants to adopt a decentralized framework.
That is very, very cool. Definitely kind of decentralized governance is in flux at the moment. Like people are trying to figure out what works best, and how to make it work best, because voting participation has always been one of the things which is challenging to tackle. Legendary, I know you wanted to come in here. Any a final question before we hit the Web3 news and hit the final headline as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I do have a follow-up question, which is maybe more on a personal level. From at the beginning of the conversation, you mentioned with Play Ember, you have to let go. You have to let them do the things that they're good at. With the IP, you said, you have to be open source. You have to share files and let others also build on that IP if you wanted to cross-pollinate and spread faster. Is it something that you found hard on a personal level as the one like steering the Pixelmon ship to have to let go of control in those domains and aspects?
Sorry, finding the mute button. So I'll say I find it less hard than some of the pure artists that did the groundwork. To some extent, I understand that. What I find, what I think is more relevant is when do you open the floodgates? Because it's true, you can't open the floodgates at zero. There needs to be enough definition around your IP that people know, is this a thing with spaceships or is this a thing with horses? Effectively, So the part where I sometimes, if I have to have my things that worry me before going to bed is, have we defined it enough? Is there enough context for those external builders to go on good, to make changes, imagine it their own way, but not go completely off track? So that's a little bit the side that maybe could worry me at times. But at the same time, I've spent a lot of time in fan art and just looking at, when you look at thinking gaming about the mod community, when you go into in Pokemon itself about all the fan art around new Pokemon species, new possible abilities, and I really believe there's something there, both when you go retail and when you let medium-sized organizations develop freely. And especially now that we live in a world where discoverability is very meritocratic, meaning ultimately good content makes it to the top, and below the top, there's anyways a flood of infinite content. So at that point, why are you trying to control the flood rather than let more and more create and let it emerge through the meritocracy of viewers, players, consumers? We are in a world where you don't decide what makes it all the way up by putting your marketing money behind it. You put your money behind what has organic traction by itself, because all the social media platforms, all the marketplaces for gaming, they're all now meritocracy and momentum driven. So I think now we can do this. Admittedly, 15 years ago, if you had done this, it would have been very hard to, pull up the right project, because the meritocracy discoverability was much harder in a world with less social media, less internet age, less reposting, less community-driven discovery and evidence. But now I really think it's the way.
I love that perspective. I think that's must speak to so many people here. I know that's true for me as a person who's been creating content like daily on the timeline. And I can see loads of prominent creators in the audience as well who know that consistency and that routine of creating content, like in the end, if what you do is good, if you iterate and if you improve, like if it's worth it, it will rise. And I love that meritocratic aspect of how content has gone. And I agree with that shift in perspective, where it's like you want to back the content that's already rising. You can't just but you can't throw things down people's throats. Like, this is the thing we want to chuck to you. You have to partner in thoughtful ways with the people who are producing what people already want. I love that idea. We're going to touch back with you in just a moment, Julio. We're just going to hit the rest of the Web3 news to get people up to speed with what else is happening in the space in the previous 24 hours, hit the final airdrop news, and then we want to touch on the Pixelmon token as well, which I think is always gets people excited. So as always, this roundup is from the snapshot, which is pinned up top. Number one, AOF released airdrop allocation apology tweet with a token giveaway. This was criticized by some, thinking that it should have just been an apology and not with a token giveaway at the same time. We reported on that yesterday. Number two, Solana Mobile announces soulbound token for those who pre-order a second Saga phone. Could they run it back for Solana Mobile holders? We'll have to wait and see. Number three, On-Chain Monkey announces 7,836 Genesis holders upgraded their art to Bitcoin, and those will receive the Karma coin. It does appear that the remaining 2,000 or so on Ethereum will be able to upgrade in the portal next month. Next, Immutable announces ZK EVM mainnet early access going live. Also, Roop Rainstow's Smile Solana collection. This is an art collection. 10x's from 0.2 to 2 Sol before it retraces to 0.8 Sol overnight. Number two, Nouns Deli restaurant funded $202,000 by Nouns is ready to open today in Melbourne, Australia. Nice to see projects funded by Nouns coming to fruition. And finally, Amber Vittoria and Kelly Milligan are releasing a 250-piece art blocks drop today that will come out later. That is the roundup from what else is going on in the space from the past 24 hours. Legendary. The final headline for today was the headline yesterday, will probably be the headline tomorrow as well. What is going to happen? Jupiter airdrop to go live today at 10 a.m. Eastern time. Key thoughts. We have just a few minutes left. What is your thought on what are you going to do? What's going to happen with the price action? How are you feeling?
Sure. I just looked at the perps market to give us an update. Yesterday, we obviously did hit 70 cents before the show. During the show, we were trading at 61, 62 cents. We are back up. We are at 69.9 cents on Helix. Also, volume has significantly increased. Yesterday, the 24 hours leading up to yesterday's show, we saw 250K. Now we see almost 2 million volume, so definitely a strong uptick there as well. In terms of what I will be doing on a personal level, I do have a Jupe claim on every single Solana wallet, which I have. Ooh. That's about eight. That's about 8 wallets that I can claim it on. Definitely will take a bit of profits, but do plan to keep the majority of it since it is the first of 4 airdrops, as we touched on yesterday, and I probably just want to put that Jupe money to work in some other protocols in terms of liquidity provision, etc., to just set myself up for another Jupe airdrop, but B, also airdrops of those other platforms that will probably have some incentivized pools for Jupe token holders.
Very exciting day for lots of people. I know so many people who've been committed to Solana for so long, looking forward to it so much. I only have one wallet which is eligible, but that doesn't make me less excited for the people who are. I'm very, very happy for the people who are going to absolutely print today. I'm completely delighted. So excited for the space to have this nice liquidity injection. We want to draw to a close. We're running out of time. We're talking about airdrops and tokens, Julio. You also have the Mon token, which you've been working on for quite some time. What's the kind of TLDR? We only have like a minute left or so. How should people be thinking about this token?
The way they should be thinking about it is a gaming token on steroids. So it's effectively the gaming token of the entire Pixelmon ecosystem, but it has the long-term potential of becoming an IP decentralization token across gaming IPs, meaning ultimately Mon starts as the token that powers the Pixelmon games. It starts at the token that powers decision making within the Mon protocol. So all those IP decision making decisions we were talking about earlier. It powers grants by the Mon protocol, and it powers the royalty payment back to NFT holders for Pixelmon across 4 or 5 games just this year. But then it could also be adopted by others because you've built an infrastructure where effectively Mon protocol can power the same ecosystem for other IPs. And that's where you go from effectively one gaming token to ecosystem token.
Very, very interesting stuff. I've got this tweet open at the moment, Giulio, about a community pre-sale. Is the pre-sale still open in any way? Is that closed?
It's still open for the next week or two. The way to access it is dual. So if you want guaranteed slots, you have to essentially acquire NFTs. If you want waitlist slots, so raffled slots for the slots that are not picked up by NFT holders, you can just contact our communities, contact our holders, enter our Discord, and get somebody to give you one of their waitlist codes. Every NFT comes with guaranteed slots and waitlist codes to distribute.
Amazing. Sounds really, really good. Thank you so much, Giulio, for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure to dive into kind of the mechanics and behind the scenes of the Web3 gaming ecosystem. If people want to keep on top of what you are personally up to and on top of what Pixelmon are doing, what is the best way for them to follow along?
Follow the Pixelmon X account, follow my X account, juliox.eth. And whenever you have a question that you want answered, tag me or jump into our Discord and ask me directly in the Ask the CEO channel.
Awesome. Legendary. Any final thoughts?
Nothing to add to that. Absolutely enjoyed today's discussion.
Thanks so much, guys. This was a great show. We had up to 130 people live on X. We had a bunch of people on YouTube. As always, if you're new here, we do this every single day, Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. Eastern time, 12 p.m. GMT, getting into everything to do with the NFT market, the crypto market, and ideally discussing how to make some money on the internet. Have a wonderful day. Take care. Thank you, Legendary, for co-hosting. Thank you, Giulio, for joining. Thank you to our speakers, NFT, Stats, Eliza on stage, Jack, Oxy, Tiro, and anyone else who contributed. Have a wonderful day. Take care. We will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.